Okay, it really represents the area of the South where we have it's like a crescent, a high concentration of African Americans who are part of these communities, and it's become a very important part of the policy community in terms of how, and they tend to be high level of poverty, a lot of unemployment. So it's really been a geographic focus of interest by states and also by the federal government. We heard of Silicon Valley. You've heard of the Research Triangle in North Carolina. Silicon Valley, of course, being California. These are images that say that there's something that kind of helps us hang together, that differentiates us from other parts of the country. So that's what we mean in terms of having this kind of similarity within. We could probably take this a little bit further by talking about these different kinds of regions, and I offer these just as stuff that we've been talking about in the Strong Economies together too. You have regions based on these 5 or 6 different designations: functional, political, administrative, data, and issue. And each of these are legitimate ways to define a region. So, for example, when we talk about functional area, we could talk about something like we have watershed regions. Economic regions, we think primarily in terms of clusters or labor markets. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the economic research services typology. They have several typologies, but they do have a typology that focuses primarily on what are the main economic drivers. So we may have manufacturing-dependent areas. We may have service-dependent areas, agricultural-dependent areas, which tend to be primarily in the Midwest. So this is a typology that talks about, again, it differentiates this region, these areas from other parts of the country. With regard to clusters, you may have something, for example, like advanced manufacturing or biomedical clusters that are evident in certain parts of the country. As far as political, we're talking primarily, congressional and legislative districts. So we have regions, we have areas that have been designated because of political factors. Congressional districts, for example. We have administrative regions like school districts and water management districts, counties that have a geography in terms of political administrative activities. And we have data regions, we have metro areas, we have non-metropolitan areas, we have commuting patterns, we have retirees, we have regions that are defined by these are retirement destination areas, or these may be areas that have high concentrations of racial and ethnic populations and whatnot. So there's one that ERS calls persistent poverty regions. Again, it's all designated by the fact that they meet a certain percentage of their population that's in poverty. And then we have other things like issue areas, like high crime rates. Actually, that's also another one that would as persistent poverty could be there too, but that's both a data and an issue category. Can anybody think of any other region designation that I have not captured here that you think of when you think of region, aside from these particular categories? Any of you would like to recommend any particular other items, or even geographies or regions that are defined that I may capture here, but I may not have expressed that particular kind of region? Anybody have any thoughts? Don't all be too quiet now. This is going to make it long for me.
Okay, Bo, this is Patty.
Thank you, Patty. I knew I could depend on Patty to come through for Colorado.
Thinking about geographic, you're right. The Appalachian area, the Rocky Mountain region is very unique to where we are, all up and down the Rocky Mountains, because of, the challenges we face within those mountains. And so that would be a region, I would think.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I was in my quest to become very efficient in my presentation. I forgot a couple of questions that I wanted Rosa to ask all of you. So, Rosa, if we could, let's start with that first question. I apologize for forgetting that. Let's go to the first one. What is your current position? I may not have captured the diversity of people who are there. So, give me the first one, Rosa. Could you go ahead and answer this? And again, I knew this is primarily targeted to our rural development colleagues, but there are others on the phone I know who have other on other categories. So see if you can. Everybody see it? Yeah, go ahead. Good. We have 14 people who are participating, so we should have at least 14 people on the poll here. Does everybody have it on their screen, or?
We got 9 responses so far.
9 responses. Come on, I need more. Come on, I gotta have a high response rate. Give it another few seconds. Come on. Okay. There we go. And so, not surprisingly, okay, we're up to 10. we're doing better. This is what I thought it would be, and that would be we have some extent. I think I'm the one who actually answered for myself. I'm an extension person. I know we have our person from Southern Vancouver be the other, I suspect. But most of you, of course, are with rural development in a either regional area capacity. So thank you. That helps. And let me ask you the other question now. Rosa, if we could come up with that other one. If you could rate yourself in terms of your knowledge of a regional community economic development, tell us whether you have, and the last category, by the way, is somewhat of a joke on my part. I have no idea.
I was going to do that. I have no idea what you're talking
about. That was kind of you can answer that if you want to, but I think it's probably you're probably being funny like me here. The reason why I want to know this is because some of what I'm going to talk about may be things you feel very confident in already. Given that I really want to ask you to please make this a very interactive process because you have a lot of skills. It's clear to me that the bulk of you feel you have a really good working knowledge of this topic, which means I may not be providing you with a whole lot new information, but hopefully we can benefit from each other in terms of what you're bringing to the table. So this is really, again, hopefully a call that we can all be talking together about this topic and gaining from the knowledge and skills that you are bringing to the table. So I'm glad that one person has no idea what I'm talking about. Either I'm doing a bad job or this is a really entirely new topic to you. So anyway, thank you for that. I think Rosa will be okay. We can't get all those people to vote, but that's okay. So anyway, so what I want to talk now is really spend a couple of minutes talking about why a regional approach. And I think this is one we've used, which is a great way when I talk about this regional effort. This is no small matter when the person who heads up the very agency that many of us on the phone are associated with. It's pretty important when the Secretary of Agriculture makes this kind of statement. And he made this about 2 or 3 years ago, and I've never forgotten it because it's a really good way for us to say, hey, why should we care about regionalism? And as he says, the framework for the future will be regional economy. No one community will prosper in isolation. That's his notion. I think he continues to talk about this with the obviously with the re-election of the Obama administration. Secretary Vilsack, as far as we're aware, will remain. At least the word is that he is going to continue as Secretary of Agriculture for the next term. So the way he thinks about regional development is pretty important to all of us. And if this is the way he views the world with regard to the future of rural America, then it's probably important that we continue to spend time thinking about how we can make regional development really effective in many of the rural communities that we work with. So let me ask you this: do you agree with what Secretary Vilsack has said, or do you have some concerns? So I could not find a little smiley face with his fingers going up, so I have to. So let's open it up for discussion. Tell us what you think about this. Unmute and go ahead and talk. You can raise your hand if you want, so I can go ahead and ask you a question in some type of order if you'd like. If not, I'm going to start calling on people. So we can either do this, you can either volunteer. I'm going to call on you.
Hi, Bo. David Foster. I'll start. I'll just say, yeah, I agree with him because, and I'll just say here specifically in Nevada, we have some very remote communities, and they can't do it on their own. They do need to team together because they all have specific assets and specific issues that they're facing, and it's better if they pool their assets when they're reaching out to the world.
Thank you, David. Let me ask Kathy. Kathy, you have a very intriguing comment. You said, I agree, but there are territorial challenges. Kathy, you want to expand on that for us?
Well, I'll keep my communities confidential, but in some places there are cities and counties who are very close by who can't even get along. How are you going to get a whole bunch of counties and cities to get along and get something done?
Okay. I don't know if that may be a unique situation to you, I think, Kathy.
Oh, yeah, that's all yours.
Because I hope our laughter means that you've hit the nail right on the head, Kathy. Very, very important comment, and one I think we're all struggling with. Others that may have any comments?
I think in Colorado we're very much like Nevada, the isolation of the communities. I mean, when people are back east, and this isn't to be derogatory, but people have no idea when they come here the space between communities, the physical challenges of working together, and also a lot of public lands in between there. So
right.
So it's you add a lot of challenges. So they have to work together. They've been isolated physically. And what they're finding is they have to work together because of just the economies of scale. People are tired. People are worn out. You have to build capacity on a bigger range. So we just found that it's helpful.
Yeah, and Patty, I think if I remember well, you've got 10,000 square miles in the 3 counties you're working with. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually have 18 as Northwest Area Director, but yeah, we have one county in our next region. We have one county of the 3 counties. There are 3 large counties. One of them is as big as the state of Connecticut.
Right.
With 14,000 people.
And clearly, for those people in the West, this is a real challenge. But it doesn't mean that this doesn't make sense. It just says you got to find important ways to try to figure out ways to get the work done.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean if they were living next to each other they'd get along either.
Exactly, like Kathy said.
Yeah, Kathy, you're
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I think that's the benefit of SET, because I don't usually like coming in saying we're federal, we're something, special, but we're neutral. And I think we have no dog in this fight. And I think that's the best thing we bring to the table when we come in as a federal agency or a state agency or whatever people are, is because we can be neutral and not play into taking sides.
Great. Anybody else want to offer their thoughts on this to add value to the questions we've had or discussions we've had already?
I'd like to add something, and my name is Elisa Dahl.
Okay, thank you, Elisa. Good.
And I'm actually an alumni from the very first class that they had for this. So I been away for a little bit, but we have kind of a unique situation. I'm an area director out of Minot, North Dakota, and we obviously don't have a problem with jobs here. We are very busy, but that has given us some very big challenges. And so recently 19 counties, oil and gas producing counties, banded together to form kind of a regional coalition, one that existed before but not in the same way, took advantage of a grant to provide assistance to all of those communities that have been hit very hard with infrastructure needs, housing needs, how to deal with this huge influx of jobs and people. And you think you're fine when you have the jobs and the people, but it really does create a bunch of new problems. So by banding together and taking advantage of a regional grant application, they were able to get some technical assistance and some help in planning and coordinating strategies for that. So it's been a very successful project in North Dakota.
Very good. That's great. Well, we're hoping North Dakota will consider being part of SET, because I know we had talked to Kathy Tweeten before at North Dakota State, and hopefully RD and Extension will be willing to think about it. So hopefully. Great comments, Elisa. Thank you. Anybody else? How about our Mount Pleasant, Iowa group? I don't know how many you have in the room, but I know that in Iowa everybody gets along well. Just want to know if anybody has any comment from our Iowa team. Okay. They may be gun shy here. They probably don't want to talk. Okay, well, very simply, the Council of Competitiveness had a fantastic article in 2010 that was published. They talked about regionalism. It's like I said, the whole focus of that article or issue was on regionalism. And very simply put, they said there's three things that regional development or regional efforts contribute to: conversation, connection, and capacity. Seems very, very simple to talk about it, but the first one is one that Kathy referred to, and that is conversation. How do we get people from different communities or counties to come to the table and talk to one another? And that's no small feat. Looks good on paper, looks good on a PowerPoint, but making it a reality is really, really difficult. Connection, I'd like to think about this in the context of a lot of work that's been done on building social capital. It's how do we bridge different entities together? That regional development does not reside strictly with local government or economic development organizations. It really requires multiple entities being at the table, including education, health, nonprofits, faith-based, you name it. There's going to be a real broad-based group of people who are connected together, working together to create a regional initiative, a regional economic development effort. And then capacity, how do we give them the skill sets that they need to make smart decisions about the future of their region? And that includes having access to really good information that can help them make appropriate decisions about the direction that their regional economies should be taking. So it's really those three simple things that seem to make sense with regard to the regional approach. So let me now talk about a few of what has been defined as some of the key elements of a successful region. And what I'd like for you to do is to think about how well or how not so well your regions may be emulating or at least aligned with these kinds of features. By the way, I'm going to ask you to think about, as I talk about this, I know many of you are in regional positions, some of you are in state-level positions. I'd like for you to have a frame of mind about a region that you can think about. Think of a region, either one that you live in or one you grew up in, but have some reference point as I'm thinking about, as I'm sharing these particular features with you. So let me go ahead and start with the first one, and that is having people in important leadership positions who kind of have a sense of the new economic realities. And I think this is a very challenging one, but the fact is that today's economy is a whole lot different than what it was in the past, and having individuals in key positions who understand that is really pretty important. The second thing, of course, is what we said already. You got to be committed to collaboration. I know we keep kidding in the South, and I imagine many of you from different parts of the country talk about this, how football games have really been a divisive kind of thing, that you beat us in football, therefore we're never going to talk to you again. So it's that kind of thing where we try to let bygones be bygones and find a way in which to really build collaborative work. Third is recognizing that we are part of a global environment, that what happens in Main Street of your community or your region can very much be impacted by events happening in the Middle East, in Europe, in China, in India, in South America, in Mexico. I mean, we are really globally connected, and that kind of understanding really makes us have to take note of how we have to make decisions that recognize some of these larger global trends that could impact our very economy. I know that I'm in the South. Much of our changes we've had in the manufacturing sector have been dramatically due to some changes. Of course, the ability of other countries to outcompete us in terms of producing particular products and services. Recognizing that we have to, that we have some things that I think was mentioned earlier. One of our persons on the phone talked about we have to recognize. I think David talked about recognizing our strengths and where do we have some limitations. Being honest with one another about those particular aspects. Obviously, flexibility and adaptability. We always have some people who say, damn the torpedo, full speed ahead. failing to recognize that times are different and that we have to be very adaptable to situations, because we know that things can happen overnight that we had not anticipated. So that adaptability and flexibility is pretty critical. The other one is having in place capacity or structure that allows us to respond. And I think when we talk about regional development, we have certain regional groups that are in place, but they may not be the right configuration. They may not be the one that really is aligned with the economic strengths of our region. So you have to have a structure that allows us to really be able to respond, to be nimble, to be able to effectively move forward when the opportunity presents itself. The other one is comprehensive view of development. And what I mean here is that we do have, well, I think many of you who've worked in rural areas realize that you can go into communities and work in regions and work with the local leaders, and you swear that they're doing the same things today that they did 20, 30 years ago. Their mindset, their economic development plan remains pretty much entrenched with the past. And so they have pretty much a singular focus on, let's say, for example, industrial recruitment. And that economic development in a region is going to require a much more a larger diversity in your economic development portfolio. So having that more comprehensive view is pretty critical. How do we look for opportunities? How can we constantly stay abreast of what may be some things that, not only the low-hanging fruit, but what are the opportunities for the future? Then finally, how do we find a way to document impact? I know that Scott and I, in our positions as regional center directors, we always are reminded that no matter how good of a work we're doing, if we can't demonstrate what the impact of our work has been, we have a hard time getting Washington to want to buy into what we're doing or to try to continue. And we say we have our USDA agency with whom we work. They're always asking, show us impact, demonstrate the output and consequences of what the investments in the regional centers have been. And I know all of you in rural development, we face this, and in other agencies face the same kinds of issues. So that's kind of the things I'd like to share with you with regard to some of these successful features. So what I'd like to do now is just show you a little bit of very simple rating scheme. If you were to think about your region, on each one of these items, you can say, well, you know what, we're fine, we're in really good shape, we're doing this well. Mixed reviews mean, well, we got some, pretty good in some cases, in other cases not so good. And then it could be one that needs a lot of work. You know what, we're pretty poor on this particular measure, and that we got a lot of work to have to be done. So what I'd like to do now is just ask you if you would go ahead and take, Rose is going to do this in kind of a two-part. We have part one, which you are asked to, you can see we have question one, leaders recognize new economic development realities. Go ahead and check the box for each item that you think best relates to your region, okay? And then you have the second part. So you basically have 9 items you got to respond to.
Actually, Bo, there's 10.
Oh, 10, okay. Oh, yeah, 10, yes. Sorry, yeah. Don't worry about the little boxes being by the left of the question, just the responses below that.
So we have one particular community in mind, is that the idea?
Yeah, think of a region that you work in, Patty, just use that as a reference point.
Okay.
Just think, so I'm going to think about, it could be the regions you've been working with, but just think of one of them, Patty.
One of them that we're already working with, not about to work with, okay.
Right. Or either one, whichever, again, as long as, so think about, so all of you have to answer 10 questions, in other words. Okay?
Okay. Well, it's very different between the ones we've been working with and the ones we're about to work with.
Exactly, yeah.
Can you define needs work?
That means that they're pretty weak at it, and we're going to build their capacity in that area.
How would good shape apply to that then?
Yeah, on question 8, though.
Okay.
What's that? These, let's put it this way, these are not the terminologies we want to use if we want to publish something.
Okay.
These are pretty loosey-goosey kind of categories, but we're trying to make it pretty much, down-to-earth kind of categories as opposed to, a Likert scale that has several items. Now, we have about 8 people answering each of these questions, so I'm urging those of you who haven't answered to please try to see the best you can do here.
And maybe also, if folks are having trouble answering, let us know what is puzzling you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, mostly 6, 7s, and 8s. Question 6 through 10, we probably need to get more responses here. So.
Oh, my responses disappeared.
Ooh.
On 6 to 10.
Oh, we need to broadcast results, and then you'll see. I just clicked the broadcast button, so.
Yeah, she has already got them there. So it's probably not capturing everything here.
Yeah, and oh, there we go. Got it. Never mind.
So it sounds like people are having trouble answering question number 9. Maybe you should say a little bit more about question 9.
Well, that is, do you when you say search for ability to search for opportunities, do you have people who are dedicated to really, keeping an eye on what may be some opportunities? It could be looking at grant opportunities. It could be somebody who's in a grantmanship position, working with the region and trying to look at what may be, grant efforts that may be available at state level. It could be, or from rural development. I know we don't have a lot of money extra in rural development. I don't want, or the Department of Labor, just EPA, HUD. There's a lot of different federal sources that are really looking at regionalism, and to what extent are we able to really take advantage of those kinds of. That's kind of what I'm talking about primarily. It could be more than that too. I don't know if anybody else would like to, but it's just really being, again, ability to respond, be able to take advantage of these opportunities that may be there to support the work of a regional group.
This is Patty. I think we have a technical problem. Whenever I click on number 9, it cancels out my answers from 6, 7, and 8. I think we're trying to respond.
Okay, yeah, so there must be a glitch here. So I'll tell you what we'll do is, because given that we're having a little bit of a glitch here, think of the items that we have here. So at least at a minimum, let's keep this. What's that?
We fixed it now. We put it was a single answer. Now it's multiple answer.
Okay.
Now
so
I can't click on it.
Okay. Well, I've got 10
go ahead, though.
Okay, I've got 10 items here, so maybe what we could do is open up the discussion to see, things are starting to move now, I think. Go ahead, if you can, all of you can try to answer again. That's what I like about this group. We're a pretty flexible group. We can kind of, something doesn't go right, we'll take the time to get it corrected, and we'll. Okay, let's. We're getting there. Keep answering if you could. What I can tell, let's go through these in kind of a. And I would like to ask those of you on the call to just chime in. So for the first one, about the realities of the new economic development realities in terms of, do leaders know about those? Are they aligned with those? Seems like it's a mix. I mean, we got pretty good distribution across those. I can't say that you would not rate them as good shape. Some in the middle category, and maybe Two of them said needs work. Anybody have any comment they want to add with regard to that? Anything that's collaboration, mixed? I mean, mixed across those three categories. Global view, I think more people think there's work that need to be done there. We think there's a real strength. It's a question for that people seem to have a pretty good feel for what are the pluses and all the strengths and weaknesses of your region. Flexible and adaptable, mixed reviews primarily. Structure in place to respond, again, kind of all over the three different options. Comprehensive view of economic development, good shape there, which is great. About almost half of you said I think your region is aligned with that. Needs work. Let's see.
I think that's a typo. I think
that's a typo. Yeah.
Yeah. So just skip that one.
Yeah. Okay. The ability to search for opportunities. Again, mixed reviews and knows how to document impact. I think like all good people who are doing some great work, we all struggle with that. So I think I would have answered that as either mixed or needs work as well. So it's not surprising that that's the kind of results that we may have had. So okay, that's good. Anybody want to have comment about anything with regard to, if you had to answer which one do you think is the most critical to have if you really want to advance regional development work? In your view, what's the absolute number one item?
Well, I think number one's pretty important.
Okay, is that David?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think number 6 is really important.
Okay. All right. You gotta have a group that's capable of responding. Yep. Okay. So have some type of structure there. Thank you, Patty. Anybody else?
Number 9.
Okay. Good. Anybody have any other ones that they would recommend other than the three we've just heard about?
Well, for any of us that work for any kind of state or federal organization, we better figure out 10 is all I can say, and I'm not good at it either.
Okay.
But
Number
I think
10?
that's going to be for us really important.
Yeah. As you know, when with the fiscal situation, as we're called more and more to document impact, it's going to be really important. You're right. I guess one. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't like it.
Yeah. You don't like it? You said.
It's difficult. I mean, I don't like it because I don't know how to do it yet, but we're working on it.
Exactly. Anybody else? Any final comments here? All right. Well, let's go ahead and see if we can dismiss these. And thank you for your feedback. I think we've got some obviously some important work to be done. And that poll, we asked these elements or share these elements because I'd like to think that those of us on the call, many of you on the call have been working with us on set. I'd like to think that we've been trying to make set align closely with what we think are those critical elements to regional economic development. Not that we're there, but that's kind of what that's like our vision and our dream is to continue to move forward and try to make the stronger economies together something that that really again seeks to emulate or at least align with some of those critical elements. Many of you on the call are not unfamiliar to SET, so I'm going to try to go through this in a kind of but would like to invite all of you who have been a part of SET to please add anything here. We did start SET in the around summer of 2010 with a phase 1 group, and the purpose is pretty straightforward. Getting it done is another matter, but it's pretty straightforward. How do we help communities and regions or counties come together and identify what their economic strengths are, both current and emerging, and be able to then implement or develop a blueprint that really takes full advantage of what those strengths are. Not easy to do because a lot of times, because we get so focused on our communities, we fail to realize that there are synergies to be had when we start working in partnership with our fellow communities and counties. I do want to say from the get-go that we never intended SET to replace work that's being done in counties or communities in terms of economic development. More designed to realize that, like anything else, we have to have a diversity of approaches, and some of them are better local in nature, but others are also regional. So we want to make these more complementary kinds of activities, and not so much ones where we're duplicating efforts. We right now have 26 states, roughly 50 regions that are involved, 49, 50 regions. I say that because South Carolina is part of the SET program, but they've not finalized their regions yet. So, but we roughly have about 26 states that have been part of either one. Phase 1 started in 2010, Phase 2 in 2011, Phase 3 is now actively going on right now, 2012, 2013, and I'll tell you a little bit more a little bit later about the Phase 4 for those of you who may be interested. What I'd like to say is that probably what I think may set, no pun intended, what may set apart is that we really do embrace a bottoms-up approach. And I kind of walk you through this kind of different steps, but the key is to say that we don't dictate regions as part of the Strong Economies Together. So what we do is initially we invited states to be part of SET. Phase 1 and Phase 2 states were invited based upon where do we have a strong rural development presence and where do we have a strong presence in the extension service for people who are involved in community and economic development work. So we initially invited those states, but now in Phase 3 they had to submit an application. We had a lot of states that were interested, and so rather than be selective, we said, well, let's just go ahead and have them apply, and then we reviewed those applications. They then had to create two different groups. One is a state team that was really going to coordinate the SET program, multiple agencies coming to the table. And then we had another group that were going to be the trainers, those who had the skill sets to really do the training that would be needed to work with these regions that would be selected. Counties and communities were invited to apply for SET, and then the state partner teams reviewed the applications and submitted recommendations to USDA Rural Development. Let me step one back. I have a thing, regions defined by applicants. It's the applicant who said, you know what, we think these 4 or 5 counties seem to gel together. We seem to not only have a good working relationship, or think we could have a really good one, but we seem to be kind of hang together economically. We share common economic development interests and common economic development activities. So we said let them define it. And this is not to fault anything else that's out there. So please don't take it that way. But we do have different frameworks that are used. We have economic development districts that EDA, Economic Development Administration, supports. Those are very, very valuable, but those geographies are sometimes they're not a bottoms up. They're decided by some other entities. Sometimes they're bottom up. As our case in Nevada, they have a district, but that district really worked together on SET. Another case, other cases like we have. I know we have our colleagues, some of our, Des Craig is on from Nevada, or at least he was. Des is Office of the Governor. The governor in some cases helps create regions. But again, these are decided from the top down. This is really, so we let the regions define this from the bottom up. Once USDA finalizes the list of successful applicants in the regions, then are announced, and then we begin the work. So that's how SET has approached this work, is really letting the regions come together, defining their regions themselves. Important point with this that's somewhat distinct is that these have to be primarily rural. And so what I want to do is just give you a little bit of information that tells you how we were able to really successfully bring to the table counties that are primarily non-metro in nature. Recognizing, though, that we can't eliminate metro because non-metropolitan areas have such a strong economic attachment to metropolitan areas in some cases that we do want non-metro areas to be part of the equation, but not the dominant component of that equation. So as you can see, the typology here is the non-metro micropolitan. Those are non-metro counties but have a bigger population base. Then the non-metro, non-core, these would be the most rural of the counties, non-metro counties. As you can see, about almost 80% of the counties that have been part of SET really are non-metro counties, which means we really are, in fact, including those counties that we've really been targeting as part of SET. But on the other hand, they do have challenges. Using the economic research service typology, these about 31% are considered low education, which means they have a high number of people with less than a high school education. They're low employment. That means I have high level of unemployment, about half of them. About almost a third of them are persistently poor. 20% of the population has been in poverty for almost 3 or 4 decades. In some cases, about 1 out of 4 population loss. They've lost more population than they've gained. And manufacturing dependent, and that's not necessarily considered a negative, but these are firms, these are enterprises that are highly suspect. They're not suspect, but they're at risk of being of declining because they are aligned with economic development activity that is really competing with a lot of other countries. So it just means it's a very challenging economic climate for these communities that have a high level, or counties that have manufacturing dependence, unless they can obviously improve their position with regard to technology, the use of technology. So what do we do in regional teams? Well, we do a lot of things. Training, we provide about 40-plus hours of training. We provide data and analysis, very detailed analysis that they oftentimes don't have access to. We provide a lot of coaching and support through technical assistance. And, of course, one thing we do is we provide a lot of opportunities for our colleagues, some of them on the phone, to talk. We talk about every month to share ideas, to complain about what may be not working right, but asking people colleagues for guidance on these activities. For those of you who are familiar with it, this is kind of all the modules we go through. And in some cases, if it's a region that has never been working together, they really need all of these. If it's a region that's been really working quite well together, they probably don't have to go through all this and get really to the meat of the matter, which is looking at the regional data and looking at strategies for pursuing a regional development effort. So we have, does anybody have any question about any of this stuff in terms of the content of this program that you want me to elaborate on? Because if not, because I know some of the people on the call are very, very familiar with this. I've actually been working on sending these. But let me ask those of you who know about it, is there any particular aspect of these modules that you have found that have really been very well received by your regions in terms of the importance of that content area?
Hey, this is David Foster in Nevada. I'll just add 2 comments. First, the data modules can be complicated and not easy to digest. So it's just important that you take your time when explaining it and going through it. And I'll just add that for those that may not know, we're frequently referred to as SET 2.5 instead of a SET 3 state. So going back to the key features of a successful region, flexibility and adaptability, we use that a lot because as the SET 3 material came out, I mean, we literally picked between the SET 2 material and the SET 3 material on which was better and which to deliver to our region. So we appreciated the SRDC to allow us that flexibility.
Good. Thank you, David. Anybody else want to offer anything?
This is Patty. I think one of the strengths of SET is exactly where we get on focusing on regional comparative advantage. With the data, we were actually able to show these counties what they did have in common. So they weren't focusing so much on their differences, but what they had alike, and where they could build on their strengths together as a region instead of in little pockets. And a lot of times there were things that cropped up on a regional basis that individually in each county didn't look like anything because it was 2 or 3 businesses. But then there was 2 or 3 businesses over there and 2 or 3 businesses over there, and all of a sudden you had 200 jobs in a very remote area, and you're going, wow. So I think that was really powerful for these regions to see that data and understand what was actually there.
Great. Thank
you.
you.
Patty, I agree with that. And after you go through the data and then you go into Module 7, discovering assets and barriers.
Mm-hmm.
When you have, our region is very large, 9 counties. It's 4 hours from one side of the region to the other. And when people saw what the clusters could be, and when they realized, oh, we have this industry over here, and oh, we have that industry over here also.
You're right, yeah.
And when they started discussing the assets of the region in Module 7, that like pulled it all together.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Anybody else on the phone would like to make any comment about this, or? Let me just add that we do have more mature regions, so to speak, who came on, and the typical response will be, we've already been through this, we know vision, goals, and whatnot. And they did, in some cases, they skipped right. They wanted to get to the data, they wanted to get to the meat of the matter, like David and Patty just talked about. But then they began to realize, when it was maybe a little bit too far down the pike, that maybe we should not have rushed right into the data, because you can get the data, but if you don't have, again, that structure, that capacity to respond, and they may have had some players before that were fine, but the reality of the economic regional development may have suggested that you had other players you had to bring to the table. And you know how it is when you bring people to the table after the fact. You haven't built that camaraderie, that trust. It really, really makes it tough. So many of them would come back to us and say, well, we're really sorry that we skipped through this stuff. It may have been, we may have thought it was stuff we already knew, but we realized, we're wrong. So in some cases they are well versed, they can move on to the data right away, but in a lot of cases they felt they should have just slowed the pace a little bit and taken the time to go through some of this information.
And Bo, I think that's a really important point, because that's what we found when we were delivering the data, is that we always had a really good turnout. We had, when we were delivering the data, we had over 100 people in the room, and
wow.
we found that we had such a diverse group that we had very seasoned economic development people in the room, but we also people who had no idea what was going on.
Yep.
And that's what made it difficult getting the group to understand the data. So your point is very well taken.
Yeah, I think that speaks to also putting the team together in the first place, building a strong regional team. We came in as phase 2, but we are continuing in phase 3 with a new region. And what we did in phase 2 was, we talked about building the regional team in the pre-planning. We talked about it a lot with them, and they said, oh, yeah. Then we started the training. We realized then we actually pulled one of the modules forward because I wanted the diversity in the room before we started talking about economic development. And so we really pushed the diversity in the room. I think that helped us a lot. Now, yeah, when we got to the data, they had to post the meetings in one region because every county commissioner wanted to attend, those kind of things instead of one. But I think getting those people in the room at the forefront is so critical. Now with my next region, I'm not being vague about it. I'm giving them a list of who I want in the room, and of things that are critical to have people in that room. And so we're really starting that at the outset, and I can't say how important that is to get them in at the beginning. We didn't rush through the other stuff, but I can't tell you how critical it is to get your diverse group at the outset so they can participate throughout. They come out feeling so much more comfortable and confident in what they're doing.
Very good. Any other comments from anybody? Okay. Hearing none, let me move on. So what we try to do, again, I think with the part that people get most excited about and maybe somewhat more perplexed about, because it does require, studying the data, is this part where we bring information that we share with them. There's 2 or 3 things we do. This first one is one that actually Patty was pretty instrumental in helping us think about, and that is we've got to honor the work that's been done already. We don't want to go into a region and bring these counties together and say, you know what, whatever you got on the table, scrap it. No, we don't want to do that because a lot of them have put a lot of time into building a community or county economic development plan. So what we do is we now have asked them early on in the process to come in, and every county represented on that set team has to present for 10 or 15 minutes their economic development plan. And what it does is like what David said, or David and Patty, about, we begin to realize all these different assets we have that, like Patty, I think you said 2 or 3 businesses here doesn't seem like very much. But when you have those 2 or 3 businesses in multiple counties, then it becomes a lot more of a critical mass. That's exactly what we're doing, is when people are beginning to understand that, wow, I didn't realize you guys were doing that too, And they begin to realize, what, we got more connection here amongst our counties than what we really thought initially. So first of all, it honors the hard work that's been done, but also allows them right up front to begin to see possibilities for regional activities that has benefit to multiple counties or communities. Any thoughts from anybody there? Okay. The second thing is we give them upfront data on their population and some of the and I've got a profile there in a minute I'll share with you. So we look at, again, early on, a new development we've done in SET, where they're actually looking, let's get a handle on your community right now, your county, your region. A lot of times they've come together for a region at a regional level for the first time, so they've not had the opportunity or luxury of looking at data on that region. We give them that, and we give it to them in a way that is really straightforward, not overly academic, not too detailed data, but in a visual way that they can really look at this and get a real handle on things. And the third thing is their cluster data, like David and others have taught Patty. We've given a lot of detail about how to look at your clusters. So what I like to do is really kind of follow up by, I have an example of North Carolina Eastern Triangle, or what NCET is the acronym. And as you can see, I think we've sent you, Rosa sent you, a hard copy, or at least a PDF of this particular document. I don't know how many of you have access to it. But what I'd like to do is I want to give you just a few minutes to study the data that are here that you should have available to you. As you can see, it's got population data for 2000, 2010. Pay special attention to how the population, the age structure, because I want you to kind of interpret this in the context of what does this mean in terms of our regional development. Does it have an impact? I think there's some things about North Carolina I found quite interesting. What's the dynamics in terms of population change? Do we have a lot of people moving in? What's that mean for economic development? How about the income and poverty, the diversity of race and ethnicity? Then you have things about education. As you know, the educational attainment is pretty critical. With regard to geographic mobility, I think the one that's really quite interesting is that do people over the last year did they move to a different state? That means what's the flow of human capital? Are you losing people with certain levels of education to other states, or are you capturing them? Okay. And then finally, the type of household, because that could have an impact. If you have a large number of single female or a single parent-headed household, of course that has a pretty big impact on your economy or your economic development activities. And finally, we got things about housing, only because we know from the literature that the larger number of people who own their homes, they're wedded to their region. They have a commitment to it, and therefore they can become much more important part of that. So spend a couple minutes, if you could, studying the data. And I don't know, I'll leave Rosa or somebody to control this, and see if you can come up with 2 or 3 little pieces of information that you think are worthy of conversation as we think about, again, regional development. Okay, what you think would be the implications in terms of your regional development activities. So let me stop right here, give you all a couple minutes to just review this. And then I'll ask for input on the so what. Does everybody have copies of this thing, by the way?
Maybe you could raise your hand if you have a copy of it in your email box.
Yeah, I sent it just before the webinar started.
To raise your hand, you got to go up to toward the top of the window. So it's the last little thing on the right at the top bar, the top dark gray bar, and then there's a drop-down box, and you can pick a status.
What we could do, if a lot of people don't have it, we could probably just Rose, I think we could probably make this bigger, maybe one page at a time, and just give them a minute to study each page, perhaps. Those of you who don't have,
it just took us a while to find the button.
They're finding it.
I'm spending more time looking for the button to raise my hand.
Should be very top of the page, I think.
Got it.
Some of you may be hearing some noise behind my telephone. We have a really bad storm coming through here, thunderstorm, so hopefully it won't be interrupting you.
There's been a lot of static on the line, I noticed.
Yeah.
It's better now, but it was rougher at the beginning.
Let me ask you, go ahead and start. If you look at the age structure, what strikes you about the age structure of this North Carolina region? Which I think for those of you from Nevada would find this very, very different from what you have. Anybody have any opinion about what strikes you about this population pyramid?
I don't think they're aging as quickly. We're getting a lot of retirees. They're getting more middle-aged.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, look at the number, what percentage of the population is 20 to 29 years of age.
Yeah.
So the left-hand blue is male. The right-hand view is female, appropriately blue and pink. But if you look at, this kind of tells you the distribution of your population by age, by these age groupings. And you can see that in this region of North Carolina, they have a pretty sizable number of people that we would identify as working age, right?
Mm-hmm.
20 to 29, that is a big category. This is both a plus and a minus. A plus in the sense of, hey, you have a workforce that's young, but unless you have really good jobs, you have jobs to keep them there, that could alter this equation pretty quickly. But at the same time, you do have as you look at the upper ages, it's the aging population is getting bigger as well. In some cases,
And it's an educated workforce.
Mhm.
Then it's an educated workforce. So, so let's go to of course let's look at the poverty. About over 1 in 5 are poor. Significant issue here. Very, very diverse in terms of race and ethnicity. You got 35% who are black, and you have about 7% who are Hispanic, and it's growing. And as you know, that's a trend that's that category will continue to expand. So to what extent is that regional group, that regional team, really looking at the increasing diversity of its workforce in terms of race and ethnicity, and do we have the skill sets needed to really move into the workforce?
But one of the things that I thought was interesting, when you look at the components of population change, 16% of the population change was international.
Yes, and that's the other thing, and that's probably because of the growing Latino population in this region. It's most likely these are people from Mexico. I know that part of North Carolina has really grown dramatically. So that's another thing, is that you have such a big influx of international. Again, that speaks to what does that mean for your economy? Well, it means you're going to have a lot of people where English is not a primary language. How you deal with the issue of language, how you deal with issues of people who can provide important regional or community services to address the needs of a diversifying population. This is rampant with a whole bunch of important questions. The other thing is that look how many are coming in. Domestic migration. That means you got a lot of people moving in. You've lost some people, but you have a net gain in terms of domestic population. So you have a big influx. Again, for a region, that means that's good in some respects, but as you also know, that means that they've got to feel rooted. How do you address the needs of a population that's really not been in that region for a very long time? So. Well, of course, this will be over a 10-year period, but again, there's a lot of fluidity, so to speak, in terms of how you address that.
It would tell me they've got jobs.
It could be. In some right, and that's good. But the other thing is the geographic mobility. If you look at here, you see that there are a pretty sizable number of people who now live in a different state. In terms of if you look at bachelor's and graduate degree, about 33% have a bachelor's or graduate degree who came in. The final bar showcases the educational credentials of adults who moved to another state over the past decade. So they've lost a pretty sizable. Look at the human capital of how many people have. In other words, look at that. You see that you've lost some people with really high level of skills and good education. A higher percentage have left than what would be than those that actually remain in the area. Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, interesting ways to get again, and I think those of you who've been involved in SET realize these discussions like this these data have really raised a lot of interesting conversations amongst our teams. Who've been part of SET. These data really basically, in some cases, first time they've seen this kind of information at the regional level, so it really opens up quite a lot of discussion. Any thoughts from anybody on that? Okay, so let me move on then to the next item once I get the PowerPoint here. Again, this is where I talked about the reviewing the data, so we'll move on. I'm going to skip this because I accidentally put this where it should not have been in this PowerPoint, so I'll come back to it in a minute. What I want to talk about is one thing we've tried to do at SET is to work with our regions on clusters, and this is really a key part, one of the key parts of the program. Each of the regions are providing up to 22 clusters. There's 22 possible clusters, predefined clusters that have been developed by EMSI. It's an outfit that does a lot of, that's whom we're working with. Great information that allows us to look at potential regional clusters in a given region. The team studied these clusters both and began to make some smart decisions about which ones they think might be aligned with their regions. Some clusters are not. There's no. It could be like a biomedical. Well, it may not even be. It may be one of those clusters that there's no way in the dickens that ever be in your region. So the regions are asked to make some decisions about which ones of the clusters do they think might exist in their region, and then we go ahead and generate detailed information on each of those clusters. Then we give it back to the regional teams, and they study this. They weigh it, but it's not only weighed in terms of which cluster is strongest. But do we have the resources? Is it something that we really want to do? I know we have a colleague on our phone from North Dakota. I know North Dakota's been their economies have been really thriving because of natural gas extraction. But there are also challenges with that, and some communities may decide, you know what, we don't want to go. We don't. Our value system is such as that's not where we want. That's not the kind of cluster we want to invest in. So they have to make decisions about, we may have one that may be manufacturing, but it may be one that is really not may have some concerns for the environment, and they may decide, we're staying away from that cluster. Even if it's a cluster that exists, it may not be one they want to continue to build and strengthen. So they have to create a priorities, and then they identify clusters to pursue. And then once you do that, then we begin to work with them about are there value-added activities that might be available to support those clusters. And so we really do it two simple ways. And again, for those of you on the call who are well aware of this, I ask you for your patience here. But when you look at the cluster, the bubble chart, we call it, we look at two different metrics. One, to what extent has there been a change in the percent of the jobs associated with that industry over time as it improved? If it goes up, that means has there been a positive change in terms of number of jobs aligned with that regional cluster? If it goes down, that means we've lost the number of jobs associated with that cluster has actually declined over time. Then we have the other measure. The horizontal line is the concentration. If you go from left to right, that means it's becoming more concentrated relative to the nation, and that's what we use as a reference point in our cluster analysis that we provide to our colleagues. So this is how we classify them. Then we have these. We obviously have these groups, these clusters that are in the top right quadrant. Those are the ones that are strong. The jobs, they've grown over time, over the time period that we're looking at, and they've become more highly concentrated than the nation as a whole. Then we have at the other end the transitional ones, and those are ones where the job numbers are declining and they're becoming, we're losing concentration relative to the nation. We're less concentrated in that area. Then you have what I call those light blue ones, the emerging ones. These are ones that are becoming stronger in terms of number of jobs, but they're not quite concentrated. They're not higher than the nation as a whole in terms of the concentration of people in that job in that particular sector. But it could be one that's getting stronger, so it's kind of emerging. And then we have the ones on the bottom right quadrant who are mature. These may have been the stars of the past, but are now kind of declining. They're still highly concentrated, but the number of new jobs being created in that area is actually declining. A lot of times manufacturing, for example, or agriculture may be getting into the mature category depending on what your particular region some of the unique regional variations. So here, for example, because I've been using North Carolina, I decided, maybe I can give you kind of the North Carolina Eastern Triangle. This is what their bubble looks like. And as you can see, it looked at on the left-hand portion of the chart, you'll see change in jobs over 2007 to 2012. Okay, and then you have then you have the to the right, the right portion. You have a line there. Anything to the right means it's more highly concentrated in the nation as a whole. Typically, though, 1.0 is kind of considered that's the national average. Anything above that has a location quotient that's higher than the nation. So looking at this, you can begin to see what this region has in terms of some of its clusters that might be of interest. So we give them this, first of all, and this is a very interesting visual way for them to kind of look at all there. And to the right, by the way, you have all those 22 clusters on the right hand, advanced manufacturing, agribusiness, apparel, whatnot. AER is arts, entertainment, and recreation, the biomedical and whatnot. So they have all the categories and colors located there to be able to look at, to interpret this chart. Then we give them this, and that is where you actually get the hard data. How many jobs in 2007, how many jobs in 2012, and what the percent changes. But the location quotient, like I said, anything above a 1.0 is considered to be more highly concentrated in the nation as a whole. And one thing we try to explain to them is do not necessarily abandon anything below a 1.0 if it happens to be an emerging one. If you look at AER, Arts, Entertainment, and Recreation, they have a location quotient of 0.7, which is below, obviously, 1. But as you can see, it's an emerging cluster. But as you can also see, it pays lousy. The average earnings is 16,000. Is that right? Let's see. 16,247. Compare that to one that would be like advanced manufacturing, where the average earnings is about 71,000, or even chemicals cluster that has 73,000. These are considered the stars. These are the ones that are. And then you have the one like agribusiness, which is a maturing one. It's lost population. It still has a location quotient pretty high, but you can see it's declining, and we would classify that as maybe it's one of those clusters that's seen its better days or maybe on a downturn. Or you can say, you know what, we've had a temporary aberration here. Let's see what we can do to make that cluster even stronger. So here's where I want to kind of get at, the chart that I accidentally had in the wrong place. If you were to look at clusters in your region, do you have any idea which ones would be a star? Do you have any of these clusters that you think are really the ones that are transitioning down or maturing, and those that you may consider kind of these are up and coming, or these are our major clusters that are really shining right now? Thoughts? Any of them that you want to share about? Oh, or you may say, I don't know what they are.
Well, I suspect in most regions, healthcare is going to be a constantly growing opportunity.
So the healthcare sectors obviously could be an emerging or star, yes,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts, or do you not know for sure?
Are any of you noticing a rebound in manufacturing nationally? That's it's starting to come back a little bit due to the issues in China with reverse engineering and long supply chains, and also higher costs in Mexico.
Well, I'll comment on Nevada. I mean, obviously we have clusters and stars in mining and tourism, but we did see some emergence in transportation and logistics, which were exciting to us.
We're seeing some advanced manufacturing on the entrepreneurial side. They're not big enough companies to where they'd be offshoring anyway, and they're highly entrepreneurial startups, and so those are kind of interesting.
Good. Others? Anybody else? Well, again, these are really hard. And again, when I last question, I said, what clusters do you think have been the most dominant in rural areas of the U.S. today? Anybody have any sense of what those would be?
Across the nation?
Yeah, if you had to think about rural areas, rural America, what do you think are some of the components? Are there any clusters that you think tend to be pretty dominant?
I would hope it would be value-added somewhere, value-added agriculture somewhere.
And you're right, in some cases definitely going to be ag, right? Particularly in the Midwest, all the Great Plains, ag remains pretty dominant. Not that it isn't dominant in other parts of the country, but it's a pretty stronghold in those regions, those areas of the country. Others?
Energy.
Absolutely. Energy, I think, is our colleagues from North Dakota finding out, and others too. Clearly, Ohio. Scott, you probably have some ideas too on some of this stuff. The whole area of natural gas extraction, as you know, we're going to be considered a net exporter of some of this in the future if some of the prognostication is correct. This could be a big deal for rural areas. In the South where I live, manufacturing is still strong, though that could be short-lived if we don't provide more technology-oriented. I think what Scott's talking about, the manufacturing sector, particularly the areas that he represents, like for example Michigan, this has come on strong, but a lot of times it's required them to really to introduce a pretty big introduction of technology and automation, robotics and whatnot. They've become less people-dependent and much more dependent on technology. Anybody else have anything else? Okay, well, let me go ahead and move on then, and try to get to some of the last things I would like to say. What we've been doing is, as these regions I've defined their clusters, we've also asked them, let's start looking at where we have some leakages. Where are we losing the opportunity to add value to these clusters because there are products and services that cluster needs that are being purchased outside the region. We tend not to think this is a big deal or all that much of a challenge, but it is, and a lot of times these regions have not taken the opportunity to study these economic leakages in ways that really provide us an opportunity to create more jobs. So this is very simple. Not that we don't like the outside supplier, but if you're thinking about your region, we're trying to say, okay, what is that cluster buying outside the region? And then is any way in which we might be able to provide that product or services within the region, or at a minimum within the state, if it's something that's actually being purchased outside. So here's, for example, North Carolina, that Eastern Triangle. Look at some of these clusters that are pretty important to them, but look at the dramatic amount of economic or service products and services that they're purchasing. Excuse me, outside the region. Look at the chemicals. Look at the amount of money that's actually being. Now, some of these may be ones that there's absolutely no way you can have any kind of substitution for that. But in other cases, taking the time to really study this is really pretty important. Any of these kind of strike you as quite dramatic? And by the way, when we work with a region, if they say, hey, we're going to go with an advanced material or agribusiness and look at the amount of leakages, we'll actually go in there. We'll begin to identify in detail what those specific industries that are part of that red, so that they can begin to look at as a team. Are there any opportunities here for us to look at ways to reduce that amount of leakage? So let me just move on because I know it's been a while here. We've been at this for a little while. So we want you to try to identify industries that support the cluster, what services are being bought, or products and services are being bought outside the region, and do we have the ability to supply some of these inputs within the region? And if so, then let's see if we can do that. And do we have existing entities that can do that? If not, can we create or provide the opportunity to establish these kinds of entities? And we have labeled it very simply CARE. How can we try to do this import substitution by looking at a potpourri of strategies? It may be we have businesses with a little bit of tweaking, redirection might be able to provide that product or services, so we can do an expansion or retention expansion, or we may have to track certain firms that are likely to be able or to be positioned to provide that product or services. I know in the South, we like Michigan, we've had a lot of auto. We've had Honda, we've had Hyundai, Mercedes-Benz. We've had a lot of firms that have come to the South, and lo and behold, a bunch of suppliers have now come to help in the region to help support that. So that's really attracting firms that will be able to provide those supplies that manufacturing sector needs, that these auto industry manufacturers will need. Or we can provide entrepreneurial activities. My sense is that in a lot of rural communities, it's been throwing, that fish hook out there and hoping that you kind of somehow magically get somebody to come. This strategy allows you to be smart, for the region to make smart decisions about what kind of industry recruitment or business attraction, what kind of creation, entrepreneurial activities we want to try to pursue a small business creation. It's done with a lot more logic to it, because it's not just throw it, hoping that you can catch something, but we're catching people. We're trying to produce jobs or create activities that are aligned with these clusters that we have in our region. What I don't want to leave with the impression that's the only way you should do this, but it's just a smart way, at least in part, to build an economic development strategy that is designed to create a CARE framework for strengthening that cluster. So what I want to do now is very quickly move into the examples of some of the people who are on the call. I know we still have David Foster. Just very simply, one of the groups that we've been involved with is the Western Nevada Development District, 9 counties. Thank goodness they had some funding from the state of Nevada, the governor's office. That $45,000 upfront money was critical. It helped them do things early on that other states would not be able to do or weren't able to do because they didn't have that kind of level of funding. And they really, as I said, forced the leaders to think beyond the usual suspects. That's part of what SET has done, is bringing new players to the table beyond what has been historically the people at the table deciding their future. it said here, help ease attention between urban and rural. No, not necessarily looking at it as a competition, but how we can do this together. I'll ask David if he wants to make a couple of comments about the work of the Western
Say that
Nevada.
again. You broke up there, Bo.
Oh, I want to ask you if you could go ahead and just make any comments about the work of your team.
Yeah, well, we've completed our SET training. We've actually completed our high-quality plan. We identified 4 capacity-building goals: access to capital, communication and networking, infrastructure improvement, and workforce development. And we identified 5 economic sector goals that we're going to pursue. They are agribusiness, energy, manufacturing, tourism, and transportation logistics. And again, since we've wrapped up our official 9 modules and we've completed our high-quality plan, we've actually formed 9 committees or groups for each of these 9 areas that are meeting, at least monthly. And then the entire SET group is going to continue meeting quarterly to see how we're doing on all of these 9 objectives.
Good.
And again, I think the SET process, we worked with an established development district that included 9 counties in Nevada, and that was great because that got us going quickly. We had a very strong leadership team in the state that included our state director, who was fully supportive of what we were doing at RD. We had full buy-in from the extension folks. We had our governor's office on economic development involved. So we had a very strong team. We had a lot of buy-in from the region and the people within the region, and we brought a lot of players to the table that were actively involved in economic development but not actively involved together. So it provided a lot of opportunity for them to meet, to network, to see what was going on in each other's towns and counties, because again, this was a huge region. It was 4 hours from one end to the other. So overall, the experience was great for everyone involved, and I think that we've put together a great high-quality plan. The district has already received some grant funding from USDA Rural Development through an RBEG grant to put together a revolving loan fund.
Good.
Fantastic. We think that's going to generate some great small business opportunities. And again, one of the capacity building goals was access to capital, so we're already moving forward on that front. So overall, I think it was just a great experience for everyone.
Yeah, what I want to do is I got 3 examples here. I want to showcase the Western Nevada Development District because, as David said, they're an established group. They've been together, but they use SET as a new strategy for building their comprehensive economic development strategy, because to be then submitted to the Economic Development Administration. So this was an interesting and, by the way, award-winning district. They were awarded the Innovation Award by the National Association of Development Organizations, NATO. Just recently, they were one of the recipients of the Innovation Award because of their work they've done with the SET kind of partnership. So great work. The other one I want to talk about is work we've been doing in one of the most impoverished regions of the country, in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. They are a group that had been together for a year or less, kind of trying to figure out a way to kind of get their act together and trying to work together. And so this brought smaller towns and rural areas that thought they were kind of marginalized or not really part of the equation because they were dominated by more urban area interests. So they came together, and because it's such a high-need area, they have not been able to really focus on clusters per se, but saying, before we can work on clusters, we have to really build our infrastructure. We have to get things in place that position us to be able to take full advantage of our economic clusters. So they're focusing primarily on these really important initial needs: housing, transportation, education, workforce development, and other things too. They're a very, very active group, but they're working more on the basic infrastructure needs that are vital to help support and allow a cluster to really strengthen. And then we have the group that Patty's on, the Raton Basin Regional Economic Development District, and I'll ask Patty to see if she'd like to make a few comments about the work of that region.
Well, I think I think that one of the things that's interesting about this region is it did cross borders. They were self-selecting, meaning both sides of the border felt that they were not as they had more in common with each other than they did the rest of their economic development district region. We did it in partnership with the economic development region in Colorado, meaning they felt that if that's something their counties wanted to do, they would support it, and they participated throughout the process. So they were very good about it. And you know, what's interesting about this is, I think if you think of yourselves when you're working this as not so much facilitators but instigators, and we kind of put this out there and then encourage them to run with it, they have formed their own 3-county group. Actually, we had a statewide meeting last week in Denver with the governor's office and all the economic development regions. New Mexico went, the county in New Mexico went with this group, and they declared themselves as a region and talked a lot about being a part of a set region. And you know what was wonderful was the way they took it on and have made it their own. The county in New Mexico has decided to pay dues to the organization in Colorado that's helping put it together, the Council of Governments there. They each county put in $5,000, and they are now going to the state of Colorado, the Department of Local Affairs, to get $30,000 to hire a coordinator to help them implement their plan. They're just finishing up their plan now. So, but I think if you can just give these people the good information, help them build their partnerships, and help them understand that they can accomplish anything. Because everybody said, "Oh, you can't form a region across a state," and I said, "Yeah, really? Okay, we are one." And so, you know, they'll just run with it. They've just been a wonderful group. Now, it isn't without trouble, you know, and challenges. I'm going to say, you know, there's plenty of stuff going on in the back room, but overall, they're still moving forward very well.
All right, thank you, Patty. And let me then move on to, you know, like anything else, I said one of the things we've got to do is evaluate impact or demonstrate impact. And I can't say that we have this all, we don't have it together quite yet, but we're trying to really do some things. But what we've been able to identify so far is that one of the benefits of SET is that it's really helped, again, broaden the engagement of people. It's build trust, what we call the social capital. Something you can't put a dollar value on. It's really, really, I think many of you will agree, it's really, really hard to work together when you don't trust one another. And what SET does, because they have to work together for over several months, 8, 9, 10 months plus, then they begin to really build this relationship and begin to really trust one another and have faith in one another. Debate, as Patty said, it's not all rosy. I mean, but that's good. You got to do that. I think one of the outcomes is to produce a regional plan. We believe we're strengthening relationships between or among some key agencies and finding a way to leverage resources. You know, doing more in terms of capturing funding that we need to support our regional efforts. So I'm going to kind of go through this somewhat quickly, but I want you to know that one of the things we did is to say we got to get more players at the table. And the bottom line is below. We increased the participation from the initial numbers, about 466 who were at the table at the beginning of the SET program, and these are phase 1 and phase 2 regions, and we increased it to about almost 1,700, about a 362% increase in the membership involved in these regional teams. In some cases, like Patty and David have had, you know, their regions have had high numbers of people involved. Other regions haven't been quite as high as we'd like. But nevertheless, we're trying. Our intent is to make sure that these regional efforts are not limited strictly to economic development organizations, to local government. That we got to get health involved, education, faith-based nonprofits. Business and industry, believe it or not, that's a tough cookie to crack. How can we get more people who are involved in the business and industry sector to be part of that team too? A lot of them are very busy trying to operate their business, but their voice is pretty critical. So we've had some major increase in participation, greater diversity of people at the table. And this is one of the things that one of our regional team members said that we think is really important about producing a regional plan. Again, coming together, we built the vision, we developed a plan that will support our region for many, many years to come. Really one of these nice testimonials of the value of what SET did for that person. As David referenced before, we have a high-quality plan. We've become much more, I think, well-focused on this. Before we were hoping people would build a regional plan. We began to realize that we haven't given them sufficient guidance on what kind of components should be in that plan. So we built a very detailed product that really says these are the 5 elements, and a number of things under that. It's got to be evidence-based. You get the data. You get the evidence that this is the right focus. It's practical. I mean, it's doable. It's not pie in the sky, but it's something that's very, you have a good plan to get it done. Broadly supported. Again, that's why we want to have broad-based participation, because that means multiple entities have embraced it. It's focused on regional economic development. That's where the cluster data become critical to uncover and discover our regional strengths, and then aligned with vision and goals. They have to identify what's the vision for this region and what are specific goals you plan on carrying out to achieve that vision. And that's so we try to make sure that these are the 5 critical elements of creating a high quality plan. Very, very important. One thing that we haven't been able, we're collecting data for our phase 2 and phase 3 states right now, but one thing we began to realize, two of the key players in this whole SET program has been the USDA rural development staff at the state level and regional level, as well as people with whom Scott and I work with, and that's our extension service. And what we've seen is the post-SET is what you want, a much stronger collaboration and cooperation now taking place between 2 agencies that have a shared interest in rural development and economic development, but who may not have been playing together in the same sandbox. Here, at least not to the extent that we'd like. So what we've seen is this tremendous growth taking place in the trust and working relationship, not only with SET, but in other areas where we have a shared interest. They're now working much more closely together. In some cases, thinking of each other all the time in terms of how we can work in partnership on areas that we really are working on, that we have an interest, like value-added agriculture, entrepreneurship, and whatnot. Does anybody on the phone have any comment here who may have been involved in this, seeing if there's any kinds of relationships that are being built beyond what they had before, prior to SET?
Yeah, I would have never known Tom Harris if it weren't for SET.
Yeah, well, we're sorry about that, David.
Yeah, I would say I would not have known my extension people as well either. And as we are looking at applying for phase 4, we've been having planning meetings, which have been really productive and really good. And so I don't think we would have had those conversations as productively if we had not been working together.
Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else? You probably not have had that experience yet if you haven't been part of SET. But the other thing is that we're really building is we began to build a very nice relationship, we think, with the EDA, Economic Development Administration. I think it's began to they do great work. In some regions, including the ones that Patty and David represent and others, EDA and Rural Development and Extension are working together. The Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy is one that they're doing in partnership with the framework that SET has provided. And so we believe EDA is really open to the ways in which we might be able to build even a stronger collaboration with regard to this kind of work. Because let's face it, we share the same interest, and that is how can we help regions become stronger and more vibrant over time. The last thing is what's our leveraging? This is the latest data we have. Right now, we probably have captured just under $6 million in money. This is hard money. This is not in kind. These are resources that the region's been able to capture. As you can see, phase 3, which is still they're still working. They're not done yet. They've captured much less than phase 1 and phase 2, but they're not there yet. They're still working on their plans, but hopefully they'll begin to capture the kind of level that phase 1 and phase 2 regions have been able to secure, about $5.6 million. But again, collectively, just under $6 million has been captured. So the last thing I want to say is this. We do have a great opportunity to expand SET to phase 4. We expect to select about 12 new regions in 2013. Proposals are due by March 1st. I have a link there to the website. Scott would also be able to provide that link if you want to. You should be able to find that link. It's not a very tedious process to complete this process, but you do have to make sure you have a team that's been assembled, and then again, we're still working to build stronger ties with other agencies and organizations that will be interested in being part of this kind of effort. For those who want to know, if you are part of a set region already or state, this new phase is open to everybody, either new states that have never been part of the program or states that have been and have opted to try to see if they could expand this to another region in their state. So let me see if there's any. I've gone a lot longer than I thought I would, Scott. I didn't think we'd use 2 hours, but here we are, an hour and 45 minutes, and I'm still talking.
Well, Bo, I know you, so I figured you could certainly fill 2 hours.
Thank you. I don't know if that's a compliment or
Well, let's just say that you sometime during your period in the South, you lost your Yankee taciturn demeanor that was indigenous to your region.
Yeah, short and to the point, huh? Well, again, for those of you who've been familiar with this may not be it may not have been anything new, but I hope it's an opportunity just for us to have a very valuable conversation about just whole focus on regionalism, So let me see, and particularly targeted to small communities, rural areas that desperately need this opportunity to work collaboratively on their economic development future. Let's open up to Q&A here.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about what are some of the fears that you have going into trying to do things on a more regional basis now that you've seen all this.
Don't forget you may be muted here. Unmute if you could.
Feel like there's good support from administration for doing these kinds of things, for spending time on this, or is there more emphasis on doing individual business enterprise loan?
Well, I would say, this is Patty, I would say that at our state office I've been fortunate to have a state director that has been very supportive, and now an acting state director that is very supportive. I would say in our state office, like our program directors and that don't really get what we do and would rather that we were out doing, rather out processing loans or doing something else that met their goals. But for those of you that are in other states, what we do know is that our state directors in RD are going to get some very, very strong goals in their new performance elements this year that are going to be focused on community development. So they told us, some of the individual people at the national level that are working on those performance elements said that the community development people will be key to helping our state director meet those goals. So if you don't have a lot of support, you should soon.
Yeah,
this is David Foster in Nevada. I think that we get a lot of support from Dave Sears and from Suzette.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I'm fortunate in Nevada that I get a lot of support from my state director, but there is a constant push-pull that about program delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may not be as fortunate as Patty and I to have state directors that are fully on board with, hey, community economic development is a very important part of what we do.
Right,
I have a banking and a sales background, and personally, my personal thought is that community and economic development actually leads to program delivery. It may not happen today or tomorrow, but it may happen next month or next year.
Right, and I would say in Colorado I can actually document that because I'm an area director as well, and they're just now trying to kind of help me pry myself out of other responsibilities so I can do more of this. And I've worked with communities outside of SET in community and economic development for many years, and I've got, process after process that I can show where the entity I helped them put together or the process I helped them put together later became an entity that was applying to us for an application for a revolving loan fund or something else. That organization wouldn't have existed if I hadn't facilitated the process to help them put it together. So we have them there, and so it does work. It's slower, and we're in a lot of people who work in funding. We only have 1 year to get money out, and we have people within the organization that have many years of working on that 1 year cycle.
Good.
And thank God for David Sears and Suzette. I would say that definitely.
Yeah, they're great.
And by the way, we have Chelsea on the line, and Chelsea, I think Chelsea works with David and Suzette as well, right, Chelsea?
Yes, I'm their, assistant. I'm here for a year.
Yeah, so Chelsea's working very closely with she's at the federal level at RD. So good to have you on, Chelsea.
Yeah, thanks.
If we can, Scott, I'd like to see if we can be so bold as to just ask a little comment from each of the people that may be on the line that we've not heard of. Watch them all leave now.
Sure.
There's
one.
Gail, do you have anything you want to add?
Hi, this is Carrie Cloud. I'm a housing specialist in the Olympia, Washington area office. Gail had to step out.
Okay.
I'm in a leadership program, so I'm really just listening to you all, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, well, let us know if there's anything we can add. And anybody else? Joe, you're on. Let's see, Joe, any comments?
I was fortunate enough to be part of the Raton Basin group.
Okay, good.
Working with them, and I'm also now in their monthly meetings that they've scheduled to help further this program and the cooperation. I think it's key that there's from the commissioners of each of the county, at least one of them has been at every meeting, which has been nice. And we do have a lot of other community members that are participating. So that's going to continue to happen. I've kind of changed up, so I'll be working with more counties that I have in my area that I didn't have last week. Community and economic development has been an interest of mine, and I appreciate Patty's expertise. She knows much more about this, and I'm just kind of learning as I go. So it's been an interesting process, and I've got a lot of interesting people that I work with. I have one economic development person from a very small county that says in the last election, 2 of her county commissioners actually have tried to close down their EDC office. So she has a unique challenge in even getting them to look at any outside answers to problems that they have in their county.
Okay, very, very interesting concern, Joe. Thank you. Thank you for that comment, Joe. Lisa, anything from you?
I'm also in Nevada, and I think David did a great job speaking for us as far as our set process here.
Thanks, Lisa. How about our colleagues from Mount Pleasant, Iowa? Any comments you'd like to add? I'm not sure if they're on the phone line or not. I can't tell.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything from them.
Yeah, okay. Patty, we've already heard from Patty.
I've talked plenty. You pass me over.
Okay, Steve, you got anything you want to add?
Well, I'm from the Mississippi Delta, and we've had so many plans and studies and money thrown at us that I don't know what the answer is, but I'm thinking we're just got finished with our set two in the area here.
Yes.
But what we lack is some kind of organization that will implement the plans. That's what we have to in.
Which, as you know, Steve, is one of the things we talked about, having the structure in place allows you to really take that plan and move with it, I always think you have to have a structure. You have to have a group that gets up every day, think about that plan.
Well, it's true. You can have a great plan without leadership. You haven't got anything. But in our area, you can have the best leader and the best plan, and culture will trump all of that.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. That's a very important comment. Anything else you want to add, Steve?
No, that's enough.
Okay. All right, Tom, anything from you? If you're muted. Okay. We don't want to embarrass anybody. Anybody want to make any other final comments?
No, but thanks for doing this, Bo.
Yeah, thank you. I hope, again, this is probably guys like you, not new information, but presenting a little bit different context, perhaps.
Well, I'd just like to offer that I think this whole regionalization thing is, a lot of our rural areas have depopulated, and if we're going to continue to provide services to these more sparsely populated areas, I think we do have to work together more now than we ever did before. So I think more efforts in this area are really needed, particularly in those regions that have seen population loss.
Yeah. All right. Scott, I'll turn it over to you for any final comments, but thank you all of you for I know we've been together for about 2 hours already, but close to 2 hours. Thank you for your patience, for your engagement, and I appreciate, Scott, the opportunity. You and Rosa gave me the chance to get together with all of this group here. And
well, thanks for doing this, Bo. And,
okay.
I want to thank everybody for being on today, and I'll also make note of the fact that we do have this is a kind of a special version of the courses, and we've got some other topics coming up in the coming months. So watch for emails from Chelsea, giving you the opportunity to register for those as well.
Yes, I'll be sure to send them out as soon as the details get solidified. I'll keep everyone updated.
Okay,
right.
Great. Well,
and thank you to
everybody.
both Scott and Bo, also from the RD office.
You're welcome. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, Bo.
See ya.